Hey, I'm back again. New video. Today we are talking about why pitching is a professional skill. It's a professional skill, so it's not a beginning exercise. Like if you're a new person, who's never written before, pitching may not be the place to be able to start. So, and I'm going to be able to explain why. Um, Pitching is not necessarily for people who are sort of just starting to write. Like if you sort of, confused about what to write about, or you don't write a lot, but you want to write things on paper, but you're not necessarily ready to share things with other people. You know, Learning how to pitch is not the place to start. For those people, what I would suggest is that you just start with the practice of journaling. You can do a gratitude journal, um, just a daily recap. You can do what is that? The daily, what is that? Where you write the 3 pages of stream of consciousness when you wake up in the morning, within the first 30 minutes of waking up in the morning. That I've done that for a while, but just journaling and being able to write down things and just getting used to the practice of putting your ideas, what it is that you're thinking about, on paper is a useful exercise. Pitching is not necessarily the place where you would begin. However, if you are a professional who has ideas, you have a particular perspective or a point of view, and you have some sort of lived experience to be able to match that perspective or your point of view, then learning the skill of pitching magazines, pitching companies, your ideas, this is a great place for you to be able to begin um, to expand that skill. Okay, and the reason is because I am a writer. I've been writing for the last, I've had a writing business full time for the last 11 years. I have lived outside of the United States, my home country, since 2018. And I have taken my writing business with me to every country that I've lived in. Um, and I'm proud of that fact. And so the reason why I'm proud of it is because I've, been told over and over again that I was too much of a dreamer um, during my professional career. My background is in education. I did a Peace Corps fresh, maybe about a year out of college. Went to Togo in West Africa for a couple of years, and I came back. And I wanted to be able to find a way to be able to continue what it is that I was doing with being able to travel. I didn't really understand. Well, I went overseas for 2 years, came back to the United States, and it was shortly after 9/11. I'm originally from New Jersey. So coming back to New Jersey in that area after 9/11 was just, it was a challenging time because nobody was hiring for anything. And so I needed to be able to work. So I wound up taking my little Peace Corps readjustment allowance and I moved to Washington, D.C., sight unseen. Had no connections, didn't know anybody, and just sort of, moved into a room and wound up bouncing around to a few different places until I finally found my footing through, finding permanent work and things like that. But in that process of getting readjusted to living in the United States, I really didn't understand how it is we had created this system of working in cubicles, working in spaces that were literally gray in color, or like taupe walls, and your desk was like facing a taupe wall. It wasn't a stitch of light anywhere to be had. I didn't understand winter. I did Peace Corps in Togo in West Africa, and so that's a pretty hot part of the planet. And so, and it had perfect. Uh, most of the year was beautiful, perfectly sunny, and and at night very little light pollution, and you could look up in the sky, and it was like, this. I remember the stars were just so bright. It was like, they felt so close to the earth. It was like you can put your hand up in the sky and grab a star and put it in your pocket. That's the way it felt. Um, why was I even explaining that? Oh, but I was explaining that after having an experience like that, having to readjust to regular life as being as feeling like another cog in the wheel. It didn't make sense. It didn't fit me. I didn't want to be there. And at the same time, there was no other way for me to be able to do something else, or so I thought. I felt like at the time. And so I spent a good, I don't know, 15 or so years working in the field of education, which I actually, in many ways, I appreciate, and I enjoyed it because it's sort of set the stage for what it is that I do now. In being a teacher of writing, I just teach writing in my own way. And so I worked a lot in the adult education system in Washington, D.C., and I was able to also take on some consultancies where around DC and Maryland, and then also in West Africa, namely in Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Mali, where I was able to work on education projects there as well. And so I appreciate those experiences because I'm able to use that in the way that I'm teaching writing while I get to travel the world. And so what I want is to be able to share with people that if you, I have a tendency to be able to meet a lot of people who are interested in having a career as a writer. And for many people, they've put it down for being practical. They put it down because they didn't really know of any way to be able to how to make a living out of being a writer. A lot of people have a vision of, just sort of hanging out, of people who hang out in cafes and you write all day in a journal and, you sort of write stuff. But how do you actually make a living out of it? And so one of the ways that I actually do make a living from my writing is learning how to pitch, in particular, pitching magazines. And that's one of the things that I teach. And so I pitch magazine articles based on some of my personal life experiences, whether it's my past experience with being a GED teacher, my past experience with being a Peace Corps volunteer and traveling, living in a village in West Africa, or I pull a lot from, in particular, the last 7 years of my life, where, I wasn't just, traveling for the sake of vacation, but just traveling and looking for a home country, a home city, just a home in general. And so I started off in Thailand, and now I live in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and I'm looking to move to San Miguel de Allende. And so in this process, I get to meet a lot of other people who want to be able to join me in doing what it is that I do, but to be able to do it in their own way. A lot of people are looking for a road map to their own freedom. And so your freedom doesn't necessarily have to look like what it is that I'm doing. But you can write your own thing. You know what I mean? And so what's nice about this, if you've been doing other things outside of writing, but you do want to write, and perhaps you do have a writing practice that, maybe you want to be able to pick up and do more of, what you should know is that editors actually respond to your clarity on what it is that you'd like to do. Your past experiences are relevant to whatever it is that they need. and that you have to have some level of a personal authority in something. I don't care what it is, whether you've been a big top end professional who's been in, living a big corporate life, making big money, or, you've been a stay at home mom taking care of your children, loving and nurturing your children and making sure they were well fed and clothed and, look presentable and, were participating in their discipline. Or maybe you did a combination of both. I don't know. All of those experiences are relevant here when you want to be a writer. If you are, I'm 48 years of age, if you are a person who is over the age of 40 and you're like, well, Juana, I don't have time or space to be able to start switching into a new area. One, you don't necessarily have to think of it as switching an entire, walking into a new profession. It could be a new arm of your profession, so it's something that you can add if you're like a consultant, a trainer, a speaker, if you've written books before. You can sort of add pitching magazines to what it is that you're already doing. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you can add pitching magazines to what it is that you're already doing as a stay-at-home mom, because you're not watching your children 24/7. At some point, there is some downtime that you can find, when they're off to school. Pitching magazines is something that you can do when you want to be able to do it. Because all you really need is an idea and an email box and a way to be able to use the internet to perhaps do some research. And really, that's all you need. You don't need a whole lot. So there's no reason that you can't do this. So if you want to be able to continue to do this, I just want you to know that it's possible. I actually just got, let's see, what's today? Today is January 17th. And so I recently, this week, at the start of the new year, got to be able to start the new year with one yes from Business Insider, where I already handed in this particular project where I was writing about my pattern of eating here in Mexico. I went to the market and took pictures and wrote up a little personal essay about how my relationship to food has changed over the last 7 years since being overseas. That's the kind of story I'm getting paid to write. And that is adding to my my personal brand with telling these types of stories about how it is that I've taken a leap that a lot of people don't take. And eventually this is going to turn into a book and some other things that I'm actually working on. But I also pitched a few stories to Parents Magazine. I'm not even a parent, but I had written, my pitches that I sent were based on my experience as an aunt. And so I pitched a story in particular about writing about how parents get to communicate with their siblings, that said aunt or uncle, and explaining the type of relationship they actually want to be able to have with them. How involved do you want the aunts and the uncles to be involved in the raising of the children? And so that's what I pitched. They loved the idea and they said yes. And so I went ahead and they sent me a contract where I can be a monthly contributor to Parents Magazine, which is very exciting. Very exciting. And so that's one of the ongoing streams of income that I get to be able to have, that I created based on my own experience. It doesn't have to be complicated, I promise you. So if you want to study what actually works, if you want to know what actually works, you can download my freebie, 5 successful magazine pitches. 5 successful magazine pitches. If you can just go to the description box and you can click on the link, put in your name and your email address, and you'll be able to get that to your email. And what you'll get is five pitches. I'll show you what the pitch looks like, and then I have a link to the actual article online, so you can see that I'm not, this is not something that I pulled out of the air and that I'm making up. This is actually something that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I've written for spaces like Essence Magazine, Business Insider. I said, just started writing for Parents Magazine. I've written for AARP, the magazine, the actual print magazine, and doing some interviews with chefs. I've done sisters from AARP. A lot of Black women actually really love that that newsletter, well beloved newsletter that's attached to AARP, and a few other places that I've worked at. There's an online place called Motley Bloom that is for it's an online magazine for neurodivergent people. And so I had written a story with them about sleep tips for neurodivergent travelers. That was a lot of fun to be able to write about. So I choose projects. I choose my writing projects that I pitch are based on my own life. They're based on my own life, and I'm just excited that people, even editors, are even interested in anything that I have to say about my life. I live a life that's worth writing about now. This is the life that I've always wanted. And if you want a piece of that, if you want to be able to do your own version of living a life worth writing about, then go ahead and download the 5 successful magazine pitches. I'm also doing a class on February 22nd, 2026. It is an 8-week container for people who are interested in learning how to pitch magazines and be able to write your own stories. Yeah, so let's do that. So click like, share this video with another writer. Do subscribe to the channel so that you can get updates on what it is that I'm doing here on YouTube and the classes that I teach and all that other good stuff. And just leave a comment. Say hello. Tell me where in the world you're from. Tell me who you are as a writer. Do you write at all, or are you an aspiring writer? Which I hate that term. Either you write or you don't. Which is, it's not a big deal if you don't. But don't declare that you're an aspiring writer. Just say, I would like to be able to write about X, Y, and Z. That's what you would like to be able to do. Because it just lets me know who's watching and how it is that I can support you and where it is that you would like to go. Okay? So that's all that I have for today. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace.